In 303 CE, Emperor Diocletian ordered churches burned, scriptures destroyed, and Christians stripped of all legal rights. Just 10 years later, Emperor Constantine was building the largest Christian basilicas the world had ever seen. Within 80 years, 90% of the empire would call itself Christian. How does a civilization flip this completely in a single lifetime? The answer reveals something profound about how power, adaptability, and institutional weakness can accelerate seemingly impossible change. This wasn't gradual evolution. This was a complete transformation of Roman society, its laws, its architecture, its moral framework in less than a century. Let's examine exactly what happened and why it happened so fast. The Edict of Milan in 313 CE was a joint declaration by Constantine and his co-emperor Licinius. It established religious toleration, not Christianity, as the state religion. That distinction matters. But Constantine went much further in the Western Empire. He returned all property confiscated during Diocletian's persecutions. He exempted the church from state taxation, and he granted church officials access to the cursus publicus, the imperial post system. Picture this: free horses, lodging, and state-funded travel across the entire empire. The church suddenly had a government credit card for spreading its message. So, Constantine's building program was strategically brilliant. He left Rome's pagan ceremonial center completely untouched. The Forum, the Capitoline temples, the traditional heart of Roman religion. Instead, he built massive Christian basilicas on the city's outskirts. St. Peter's Basilica rose on Vatican Hill. The Lateran Basilica dominated the eastern edge. These weren't just churches, they were architectural statements of imperial backing and institutional permanence. Constantine avoided direct confrontation with tradition while creating an entirely new sacred geography. The message was clear. Christianity had arrived, and it had the emperor's resources behind it. The conversion rate was staggering. Around 250 CE, Christians made up roughly 2% of the empire's population. By the Edict of Milan in 313, that had grown to about 15%. When Constantine died in 337, approximately half the empire identified as Christian. And by 395 CE, under Emperor Theodosius, 90% were at least nominally Christian, meaning they officially identified as Christian regardless of their depths of belief. This is a classic S-curve adoption pattern: slow initial growth, then explosive acceleration once critical mass and institutional support aligned. Two factors explain this speed. First, Christianity proved remarkably adaptable. The church absorbed imperial customs, hierarchies, and ceremonial practices. Bishops began dressing like Roman officials. Church architecture borrowed from imperial basilicas. The religion that once rejected worldly power learned to wield it. The second, traditional Roman paganism was surprisingly fragile. It had no central organization, no unified scripture, no systematic theology. Paganism was a loose collection of local cults and civic rituals tied to urban elites. When imperial favor shifted, paganism had no institutional backbone to mount resistance. Not everyone converted. 3 groups held out, and understanding why reinforces our explanation. Rural peasants resisted because their religion was tied to agriculture, local deities for weather, water, and harvest. Christianity seemed urban and abstract. The army resisted because Christianity's pacifist reputation clashed with military identity. Soldiers swore oaths to traditional gods. Their unique cohesion depended on shared rituals. The philosophical intelligentsia resisted because conversion meant abandoning Greek and Roman intellectual heritage. For them, Christianity represented cultural loss. Each group had strong alternative structures that Christianity couldn't easily replace. These exceptions proved the rule. Resistance came from groups with practical investments in the old ways, investments Christianity couldn't match. Peasants needed rain gods, soldiers needed war gods, philosophers needed Plato, but for most Romans, paganism offered no comparable anchor. When the emperor shifted his favor, when tax exemptions and career advancement flowed toward Christianity, most people followed the incentives. The old religion simply couldn't compete. This transformation reshaped Roman law and morality. Constantine's religious legislation introduced a distinctly Christian moral framework. New laws restricted concubinage, harsh punishments, including burning, were prescribed for rape. Sunday became a mandated day of rest. The permissive sexual ethics of traditional Rome gave way to Christian strictures. This wasn't just about which temples people visited. It was about how society defined right and wrong, how families were structured, how the state enforced moral behavior. Christianity didn't just win converts, it rewrote the rules of Roman civilization within a single lifetime. The rapid Christianization of Rome reveals a pattern that extends far beyond religion. Radical social transformation requires three elements working together. First, active support from power structures. Constantine didn't just tolerate Christianity, he empowered it. Second, an adaptable alternative ready to fill institutional gaps. The church absorbed Roman forms while offering something new. Third, weakness or rigidity in the existing system. Paganism's decentralization became fatal when imperial favor shifted. When these three conditions align, change that seems impossible can happen within a generation. The question for any era becomes, where might these conditions be aligning today?